Please be aware that this podcast is intended for a mature audience and therefore it might have language that is not intended for children. Enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome to a new episode of Mind Your Games. Today I have another guest that has been here before to save my ass. Daria, welcome.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm starting to think that you have special feelings for me because this is the second time in a short time that I'm here.
Yeah, the proximity helps, the fact that we're living in the same house. It makes it very, very easy.
Maybe that's what it is.
Here.
Are you suggesting that everybody should first live with the person and then invite them over?
No, not feasible. Not feasible for people that actually have hosts that want to come over and are not forced to.
That's not. And you know it. You know you pay me. Okay.
Today, don't say those things. Don't say those things. They don't need to know. So
it's an honor to be here. So.
Thank you. So today we're gonna talk about parenting in general, but also parenting in tennis, because we know we've been in tennis and we saw it the most, but we also saw parenting in other types of situations. And then we're gonna talk about some tennis tactics and how to play different types of players. Anything you want to add?
No, you're the one that leads, so.
Okay, so my first question would be, I want to know about your observed parenting experience. First of all, personal accounts, so your own personal childhood and life, and then what you observed from your experience in Spain and in the US.
Okay, so I'm glad that you are doing this podcast, first of all. I realize I do have something to add because I think in every sport, not just in tennis, nowadays the parenting in general in sports is a very controversial topic because a lot of parents don't want to admit that they are doing a few things wrong, or they don't want to admit the way they are and that they might be affecting the athletic development of their children. And I can completely understand that, even though we have to specify where none of us are parents yet. But I can understand how it can be very hard to separate you being a parent to your child from you being a coach to your child. There's a very fine line and a very hard one to separate. So I'm not criticizing parents for being mad at this topic or for being sensitive to it. But at the same time, what it needs to be understood is that in any sort of field, not only just athletic, if you want your child to be successful and you are the one that you want to coach the child, then you have to make sure that you know when to put the stop button or when to put the pause button. And why I'm saying this is obviously from personal experience. I was lucky to have parents that put everything when it came to my athletic development, and they obviously wanted me to be successful and make it as far as I wanted to make it. But at the same time, I did see some trends in my parents, especially more one than the other, I guess, that were, I know for a fact, that they were negative towards my development. And the reason why we're doing this is also because we want parents to try and, not do that with the child. Don't make that mistake, because after all, you only have one chance of making them better. And that time is not going to go back. What the things I've noticed with parents in the US and in Spain is definitely that in the US people take it more chill and parents take it more chill. I think, especially from a tennis standpoint, but in all other aspects as well, the parents do understand there a little bit more the fact that the sport is after all just a game, and they are happy if their kids are just doing any kind of sport as a hobby. Firstly, now In Spain, it's a little bit more of a serious situation to play sport, and I have seen plenty of parents who become more involved from the first hand. Like, it's obvious to see that it's not something that I had took me too much time to realize. That they become way more involved and become more competitive into the children's performance, and this can or cannot be detrimental. This is definitely very dependent on each case, so we cannot generalize. But to answer the question that you have asked me, yes, I do see that in Spain it's more of a serious matter when you play a sport. At the same time, I do think that parents understand better what it means to be an athlete than they do in the US. And I know this might be like, okay, what? That should be the other way around because US knows a lot about sports. Do they? It depends. I don't know, think that parents in US understand better than in Spain sports to an extent. The reason why I'm saying that is because in Spain they have a better knowledge of discipline behind it. So US might know better about the mentality of it, and they look more into psychology, and they teach you from a young age or from collegiate level, how to mix life with sports. However, in Spain, the discipline is already engraved into the athlete's education and into the athlete's everyday life. So to give you an example, so you understand what I mean by this complex phrase, is that in Spain, for example, it's very normal for kids before teenagehood, it depends again on each kid, 18 to 16, to go to bed early from 8 to 10 p.m. and they get a good night's sleep until 6 or 8. However, in the US, because of all these technology and distractions and, drinking age not partying age, because drinking age, you never really reach it. It's 21, it's forever. But party age, for example, you tend to be distracted by a lot of things. While in Spain, it is very normal, for the kids to go to bed at a certain age, and it's very normal for them to go on a morning run as part with their family. Well, who's gonna go in the US on a morning run? I mean, okay, I'm not saying people do it, but your parents don't ever tell you, honey, let's bond together while we run. No. While in Spain, you see a lot of families together, from the 2-year-old guy to the kid to the grandpa, going on a bike ride in the morning or on a jog. Like, sport is part of their life, especially tennis, running, cycling, swimming, this kind of sports. So in that sense is how I meant that their sport is engraved in their lives, and for that reason they understand it a little bit better when they're trying to develop the athletic ability of their children more than the US.
Right.
Not really long.
Wow, that's so impressive. You ask a question and there you go. It's like a 5-6 minutes ramble. That's good. That's good for the podcast. It's good for the host. I'm happy. I ask a question and then I just sit back and material is being produced. That's what a director might feel when directing stuff.
We can re-record if you want.
It's happening. But a question would be now: can you give me any practical personal examples, because you went on to generalize, which I understand, and that was part of the question, but can you please go a little bit more into detail about what could have been done in a way better, and what, if you want to do it, obviously, and as much as you want to do it, your personal mistakes or the mistake that you noticed in others. It doesn't necessarily have to be you. Just give us the practical sort of example.
Yes, of course. There was a 3 question into your question, so I forgot about the third one. But yes, I can definitely give you personal examples. Eventually it's gonna come out. So my father was maybe the figure that played a stronger role into my athletic development. But at the same time, because he was so involved, he also played a role into the less positive aspects of my development. And it was good to have my mother on the opposite side, because she would be what I will advise, obviously, to parents, even though, again, we're not parents, so maybe things change once we become parents. But something that, as a kid standpoint, that will definitely help is being more like my mother in the sense, being a spectator to my development. She did have sayings, and she did have sometimes her moments when she would tell me off for things of behavior or attitude. A lot of kids are struggling, with smashing rackets on the tennis court or swearing or being disrespectful to the opponent. And I think these things are things that your parents should definitely put a stop to. And if they have to punish you by not going to the sport anymore, they should do it, because what I did admire somewhat in the coaches in Spain and in the parents in Spain is that there is a lot of exceptions. I know my dad would agree with this, of parents in Spain who are extremely disrespectful themselves to the opponent of their children. And I think that says a lot about the family. That family has they're lost. They have no fixing, because if the parent is doing that, what do you expect the child to do? But overall, on a majority, I think parents, especially when their children won, which is obviously easier to be nice to the opponent when their child won, absolutely. They were on an overall basis more nice to the opponents, and they will compliment their play and say good fight or whatever. So I think ultimately the behaviors of the parents will reflect on the behavior of the child. If the parent is being rude to the opponent, of course the child is going to be so. So to give you specific examples about my personal life, my dad did not do something that was positive. So I mean, did something that was not very positive in terms of my development, and that is when I would lose, he would take it personally. And this is because he was sort of an athlete. I don't know technically if he qualifies as an athlete, but he was in the sport field himself in many sports, and he always wanted to become in either one of them professional one, like a professional soccer player. And in turn, his mom did not allow for sports because, grandparents, how they grew up. Sport was not a thing at the time, especially in Romania. But for this reason, this obviously grew into him, and this was his own problem that he was putting into me, because every time I would lose, he thought that I was further away from making it professional. And I know this sounds like you guys might be thinking, wow, that's really mean of him to do. But I can assure you that at least 95% of parents out there are doing some sort of action like this, at least, once every time. And I think this is very hard for parents to see. I can understand how it's very hard to see that you're putting your own faults on your child, because you don't even know you have them sometimes as a parent. You need to solve them first in order to not put them on your child. But this will be something that I definitely would bring from a personal experience, and is this mistake that my father put his own faults onto me, which in turn maybe might make me make the same mistakes with my children. And obviously keeping an open mind and having discussions like this and listening to podcasts like Daniel's can definitely help for me to be a better parent of an athlete once I become one. But that would be, yeah.
And thank you for the example. And that's an important point that you just said, that you want, in the way you're saying that every parent wants their best for their children. They want them to succeed. So whenever you see mistakes in parenting, you see them coming from the good part, from a benevolent side. They're not coming as in, I want to, because I'm frustrated, I want to release it on my child. You might see this in some situations, but most of the times it comes from the parent realizing the amount of effort and the amount of time and everything you need to put into it, and how congruent it needs to be to reach a certain level of athletics, and not even to become professional, but just to become good at anything in life, how much effort and how competitive you have to be as a person. The problem is that parents put that, maybe sometimes mirror from their past towards you. They project their feelings.
Yes. And
they push you in a way that makes you not enjoy engaging in the sport anymore, or just not wanting the parents to be there anymore. And that becomes problematic, because it's one thing to try to share that fighting spirit and that experience, and it's one thing to distance your child and to make them have frustrations regarding that sport. So this is where you draw the line, and it's a very thin line to draw. And yeah, like you said, it mostly is coming from a good part, from good intentions.
Yeah.
But it's not interpreted as good intentions by the children, and also the children cannot realize. You have to simplify it for them, because a lot of parents I see they're trying to explain to their children like explaining to an adult, like explaining to me, who I studied this subject and I've been through the athletic life. They're trying to explain, and they're trying to make it so complex, whereas you need to simplify the explanation and then build upon that explanation. Just in a way, keep it simple, and realize that they can't process cognitively as adults can. And this is the mistake that I do make with some of my students when I coach tennis. And this is something that I constantly need to remind myself of. Take a step back. You're trying to explain, like I would explain to you right now, like we're talking in this podcast. This podcast is definitely intended for adults mostly, because it's hard information to disseminate by the children. So you need to make it simple. And anything you want to add?
No, I completely agree with you. What the other thing that did come to my mind while you were saying this is when you were saying about parents explaining to their children, it brought me back to another personal thing that I've seen in my own parent and in other parents, and it's the mistrust they have for the people that are qualified to do their job. So take tennis for example, because we always give this examples in the sport. The coaches that coach tennis, okay, they always parents say, oh, but the coach is not showing him this, or the coach is not putting the enough effort. Think about it. Okay, I know these people are qualified to teach this sport, and that's their job to do. But they are also human. They're also gonna make mistakes. They can do it perfectly, and the reason why they cannot do it perfectly with your child is because, think about it, they only have 1, 2, 3 hours at max with your child every day. Then the other 20 hours, your child goes back with you, with the parent home, and you put all the rules and apply everything to him at home. So everything that the coach has worked in regards to tennis can be either washed away or it can be further learned. It depends on what tactic you apply. So if the coach, for example, is trying to teach you a not giving up mentality, okay, for example, just so people understand better, and you go home as a parent and you're playing a game with your son, like a board game, and all of a sudden the son gets really frustrated because it's really not his day, nothing is working, and he's really competitive, he wants to win, and you teach him the opposite of what that coach has taught him. You teach him, instead of finding a way, even when you're down, calming down and finding a positive attitude, and you teach him to give up, because you know what, it's not your day, you should go and think about what you've done and your actions and how you're behaving, so you put it as a punishment on him, then everything that the coach has taught him is going to wash away. So it's very complicated. I understand how it's very complicated to always support what the coach teaches the child at home, because sometimes you are not there, okay? Sometimes you don't agree with what the coach is teaching the child, so you want to quickly wash away what the coach has taught him. But the thing is, if you are so good and if you think as a parent that you should be coaching your child, do it. You know what? Do it. But I can definitely vouch that 99% will not make it, because it's very hard to separate being a parent of an athlete to being a coach as well. Look at, for example, only in tennis, how many cases we can name with one hand, how many cases have had their parents as coaches. Martina Hingis, who else?
Tsitsipas,
but there's very few.
Agassi.
Yes, well, Agassi at one point, but then Politeri. So again, nobody has begun. Well, okay, Nadal, fine,
Nadal.
But Nadal, that's the thing. Nadal, if you look at all his mentality and if you read his book and everything he's been taught, from the first moment they knew what the key was with him, and the key was with him that Nadal does not see Tony as his family, and he implemented this on Nadal from the first day he got him on court. It was hard, and there were instances where Nadal was explaining that I knew he was my uncle, and I was misbehaving with him because I knew he would not go hard on me. And Tony did not give up. So props to Tony, because this is extremely hard, and I think this is 1 in a million the way he's done.
It's very difficult to be a coach parent for sure. You need to strike the balance between how the kid sees you at home and how you are on the court. There needs to be a differentiation in his mind, and it needs to be clear. The delineation needs to be clear, and they need to know we're at home, we're playing around. We are at the court, we're not fooling around. You're gonna get Spanish if you don't do this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna be serious. And it's also difficult, obviously, the coach, parent, and player relationship. It's hard to maintain, but the fact is, no matter what you believe, first of all, I would tell that from my experience, what you believe as a coach, you have to be congruent with the parent, especially if the parent is the main coach. Always be congruent and figure things out. Don't do things differently because the kid will will not evolve, would devolve. It would be worse because you're doing different things. Add your knowledge, but work in the same page. And the same for the parents that involve themselves in coaching. Make sure you're congruent with the coach and make sure that if the coach tells you that this is the diet the kid needs to have and this is where he needs to go to bed, you have to do it. You have to implement it because otherwise the kid will not treat any of this seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the mistrust with the coach and the coach-parent relationship is a topic that we can do literally like a week of podcast about it because it's so broad.
Yeah.
But I think what needs to be concluded from this is that, like you said, congruency between parent and coach. And in my opinion, to sort of add to this, I think communication brings that congruency. That's the difference between having a parent on your side and not having it. And if you think about it, there are two cases in this mistrust and congruency, and that is the coach, the parent that absolutely agrees and trusts the coach, and then there is that parent who wants to take control but still hires a coach to train his child. And in both situations, think about it. If you communicate correctly with the parent, it is more likely that the parent will let you do your job as a coach. And obviously the side where the parent trusts the coach, it doesn't exist. Okay, that's sort of, let's take that. But let's talk a little bit about the other side when the parent doesn't agree with the coach. We have both been in, for example, in Long Island, and we saw a lot of wealthy parents who hire for a lot of money coaches to train their kids, and yet half of the time or most of the time the parent is the one doing all the training and telling the coach, I want my kid to work on this, I want my kid to work on this. And sometimes I think that a lot of parents have the feeling that the coach is the slave of the parent just because they pay their money. Yes and no. Yes, it's their child, so ultimately they have a say in what the child would do and work on it. It's okay to say to your coach, hey, I want my child to be aggressive player, or I want my child to be the typical very hardworking. So don't care about technique, just teach him how to be in a team because I want him to go to collegiate tennis, or I want him to it's okay. This thing is different. But when you're implying, like when you're saying, he doesn't win with backhands at all, and you are telling all the time during training the coach to do forehands. Well, obviously because you didn't give the coach a chance to train his backhand. So there's, again, it's a very small limit, right? It's a very small fine line between getting involved in a way that you guide the coach and getting involved in literally telling him, you do this, do this, do this, do this. Then why waste your money on the coach? I don't know if you know how to do it. So in that case, my point was that if the coach communicates with the parents and sits down with him or her and tells him, look, for the next month, I need this kid to have a variety game. So this is what's going to happen. This week we're going to work on slice. This week we're going to work on love. This week we're going to, etc., etc. We'll talk later, you said, about tactics. But if you sit down with the parent and give him some importance, the parents are like this when they hire a coach, they need to see that they also have importance. My dad was like this too. The mistake that the coach made with him and me is that he didn't communicate correctly with my dad. So I knew every moment, because I had a very close and good relationship with my coach at one point, that my dad was feeling it. And as stupid as this seems, my dad is a great dad and I will not change him for the world. But he did make this mistake that might sound to some of you guys like, that's an awful father. It's not. But he did feel that he was being left out of my athletic development because he liked tennis, he knew about tennis, and he knew what it means and what he wants me to be as a tennis player. So he's not like he was total, didn't know anything. He knew.
Yeah.
So for this reason, he was left out because my coach didn't tell him anything of what we were doing each practice. And he knew that I'm the type of person who would say, oh, I love practice every time because I love tennis, But what about those kids, who don't communicate with their parents? How is the parent then going to know if the money is worth? How is the parent going to know what the coach is doing? So I think ultimately for congruency, communication with the parent, as much as you dislike sitting down on the table with the parent, is ideal. I won't bore you anymore with this. But
No, it's good. It's good information that we need to have. You need to elaborate on it. I wanted to sort of conclude this talk so we can move on to develop the topics in a different way. Is that if you want to be a parent coach, you have to be willing to sacrifice some part of the relationship. That's very important at home, and you will feel all this pressure at home, and the kid will feel it, and you will feel it away, and you would consume a lot of your energy, and the kid is less prone to listen to you because you're also his father, who gives him gifts, who treats him very nice, it's a sort of relationship. It's very hard to mix. It's kind of like sort of mixing a relationship of a coach and then girlfriend and then wife. Your coach and wife is like so freaking weird. It's like, where do you delineate this? So that's the problem again. Where do you delineate this? But if you have a coach to help you and you can communicate with the coach, again, the key is communication, that I want this from him. Let's work on a plan. And you as a coach need to put it in practice, and you need to be rough on him as much as you want. But I want this kid to get there by that stage, no matter how you do it. That would work better because you lose that tension and you give authority to someone that will be interpreted as an authoritative person by the child. So this is very important. So you eliminate some struggles, and you free the child to communicate with someone who he sees as an authority figure, and it works much better. I also wanted to say a little bit about my personal experience, just because it comes from a different angle, from a different perspective. My parents were involved in a manner that they were doing everything for me. They were carrying my tennis bag. They were like driving me to practice.
Really?
Seriously. They were driving me to practices. They were all super nice. It didn't matter. Like, I just want you to play. It doesn't matter if you win or not, or stuff like that. They were like super friendly. And I came from the side where I was like a maniac. And everyone who listens to this podcast and saw me as a child know what a maniac I was on the court.
Not just as a child.
Not just as a child. Exactly. More so as a child.
Right.
So you probably wouldn't imagine. So my parents told me a couple of times, we don't want you to be mad or sad. I said, you're consuming yourself physically, mentally. I was tired or frustrated or depressed, momentarily depressed, as you are as a child. You forget in a couple of days. But yeah, they were telling me like, are you sure, it's your decision, you can continue or not. And they were most of the time friendly. I mean, they had a hard time with me because I was just annoying, and they didn't want to on the court. But they didn't want to be. They wanted to let the coach do it to stop. They didn't want to. They were not the parents that were getting involved, not because they didn't want to, but because they wanted to be impartial as much as they can. They knew that they had limited information about the sport and limited practical experience, so they didn't want to overstep their boundaries. But in a way, when they asked me like, are you sure you want to continue playing sport? Are you sure you want to continue playing tennis and stuff? Like, I took that in a way personally, and I was kind of like, what, am I not good enough? And it's interesting because parents, again, trying to be super nice, and they make you feel less capable than other people that are playing the sport. But that's exactly, they didn't mean that at all.
Right.
But that's the thing, that's what you feel. It's so interesting how you interpret things as a child. So there needs to be a balance between involving and getting involved and stepping a little bit and telling your child like, hey, I ain't gonna take this shit. My dad was doing that so more than my mom, and he was working, when I was like acting crazy, like, you ain't going to tennis for like a week, and that was working for me, but then in the way he was not getting involved in my practices. He was not doing this, do this. He was hitting with me sometimes. Why don't you do this? He was giving me advice. I wasn't listening because I was a mental case. But that's the balance of communicating with the coach what you want to do, of getting involved until the point basically you don't carry the tennis bags for your child. Don't pick up the balls for him. And this is the thing that I need to do it more as a coach, but I'm so focused on the court that I start picking up balls. It's like, all right, sit down, whatever, and pick up the balls. No, not good. Bad idea. Don't pick up the balls. Make him realize, make him want it. If he really wants to play this sport, okay, then you do the warm up. If you don't do these things, if you don't do the warm up, if you don't go to sleep early, if you don't put effort in practice, if you start breaking rackets in practice, you pay for those rackets. Like they need to be their own individual, and I think being accountable for yourself is what parent coaches like Tony Nadal and all those guys that work like Agassi. I mean, Agassi is an extreme example because his dad was mental too. But those examples, it's sad, but they work a little bit more than hands up, do whatever you want to do. It's discipline. It's discipline. But also giving the child the opportunity to be in control of it. Because if you're always carrying around and if you're always wiping their ass, pardon my expression, wherever they go, there's not discipline. That's they don't appreciate. I was moments when I look back and I didn't appreciate the fact that my mom was driving me to tournaments. We had a hotel to stay in. I didn't we had fees. We can pay fees. We can pay rackets. It's an expensive sport. I didn't realize, and I was like on the court, I was putting pressure on myself, not from the parents, but myself. But then I wasn't willing to put the work in because I wasn't appreciated enough. So again, it's a very thin balance.
Yeah, you know what you said about they don't appreciate it. They're basically being spoiled. That ultimately leads to them when they are on the field, court, whatever, swimming pool, whatever, on the actual action of the sport, and they are having a bad game, a bad time, they're not feeling it, they ultimately go into that negative mindset and attitude because they don't have that parent to, excuse my language, wipe their ass there. So if you're constantly in the preparation to the moment of the competition, and in their lives overall, the parents are all, let me do this for them, let me prepare this for them, like the kid doesn't even know how to do a grip in the racket. Then obviously when they hit the wall during competition, who are they going to go to? Mommy and daddy, because they do everything for me and they solve all my problems. So ultimately, parents should think about it this way. It's like, it's going to help them also during the competition time if you give them a little bit of time to build their discipline. And I think sports, in my perspective as well, is the best thing that could happen to me to build my discipline. Like, I will not be this productive person that I'm constantly, or not be able to multitask, or be able to, decide, okay, this week I'm doing a diet and I'm doing it because I know it makes me feel good, because I know it's going to help me train. All these things about, going to bed, these little things, and then the bigger things about hitting a wall and being, I can get out of this because I had tough matches when I came back from a match point and I saved the match. If I can do that, which physically, mentally, and, everything, it's hard. Every aspect of that is hard. Then why wouldn't I be able to figure out, finding a job in life, or, doing two double majors? So all these things ultimately have built the character I am today. So if for anything, all kids, I think, should be able to should be doing some sport, because man, does it build your discipline. Absolutely, it just makes such a different character.
That's absolutely great points, and I wanted to discuss about this. And you reached it. Sorry, you reached it sooner than I expected. I like that, and you tied it very well. You tied it very well there. When my next question would have been, and is, where do you see the balance of competitiveness versus character development?
Do you want me very complex question.
Yeah, it's a very general sort of question. We're talking about general stuff sometimes, So basically, where do you see competitiveness being over competitive and ruining a child's character? Like, it's all about, like, it doesn't matter if you cheat, if you swear at the other player, if you fucking fight. What matters is that you win. You win. It doesn't matter. This is competition. It's life. It's all about winning. It's all about putting maximum effort, no matter what the price is. And character development is like, okay, it's about you collaborating. It's about you being a teammate. It's about you being a better person. It doesn't matter if you win. You win with a head up. You win with a positive attitude.
That's very good. I know that you explain it like this, then it's definitely gives a few ideas to me.
Yeah.
Okay, because the question is so complex, again, the answer might sort of be a little bit complex because, in my opinion, I think it depends on as well on the culture and the country you're in. So what do I mean? For example, in Romania, okay, correct me if I'm wrong because you know more about Romania, but we don't have the strive that they have in Spain of overcoming any barrier during competition and never giving up. Okay.
I can correct you. We have the strive. We just go about it the wrong way.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. That's a good point. What I mean is that, for example, in Spain, okay, they have a constant ability to stay focused and motivated on the goal or focus on the goal until the moment the match or the game is over. However, I do feel in Romanian professional athletes that I see this as a recurring action. The fact that they have more peaks, ups and downs in their overall, if you look at their overall way of competing. Sorry, did I hit it there? No?
No, keep going, no worries.
They have, I'm using my body language, but it's very hard to do it in here. So yeah, they have a very high, and like a roller coaster sort of competition level. And when you reach the end, when it most matters the most, they don't have the mental energy to fight it anymore. They feel the pressure more. And this is very complex because it comes from, historically our background or even the parent mentality. Like it's not just one thing that you can pinpoint and say that will have done it, that will have solved it. No, it doesn't work like that. But ultimately, I think that the difference, the mix between competitiveness and character, where they differ themselves, is in that ability to be able to separate the two. And this does come pinpoint to one thing, and that's the ability of the parent to say, stop, we are out of the game, we're out of the competition, now we are just going to be, you're going to be a child, you're going to be, doing your stupid behavior, child, be bad boy, type, and I'm going to be a parent that tells you off when they are doing bad things for the child. So if you learn this from a young age, you learn to put aside, once you're done, you learn to put aside the match and the fact that you lost, the fact that you won from how you behave. Like, I am not, for example, a huge fan of giving treats to your children because they won a match. Now, it is okay, for example, to say, we're going to go to a special restaurant, the one you liked, or McDonald's, let's say, okay? But not because you won. Because ultimately, if you continue rewarding a child only when they win, they're not going to end up winning, because winning is not something that you decide, yeah, I'm going to do that and I'm going to win. It doesn't work like that. It's more, about a lot of complex things that go behind the winning. It's not like the child is going to press a button and that's it, I've won because he's going to give me chocolate at the end. No, the child wants to win and sometimes he can't. He won't, But if you reward him for winning or rewarding him for being a douche against one of their biggest opponent that is very rude, or even worse, one that I've seen girls a lot in tennis. Unfortunately, girls tend to be in this sport very rude and selfish, and this applies to all the countries, not just one specifically. Is the one about cheating? Is they know that there's a lot. I've seen, especially in the US, a lot of girls who do they cheat? And this is not just my perspective. I know that they cheat because everybody says it. It's obvious. Like, balls are miles out, in, and they say it out. And when your parent rewards you for playing with, for example, I'm playing with a cheater, okay? And the parent is telling me, look, you're going to do anything to win this person because you know how much you want it and you know how much they've always cheated against you. And think about those times when you're going through a wall, okay? Is that the right behavior for that child eventually? Because if the opponent cheats and if the opponent has a bad education, it doesn't mean that your child should have it. And why? Because it's going to affect them in the very far future. And how it's going to affect them? Let's say they're part of a team and they're cheating against their own mates, their own teammates. So what is that going to do? That's going to take it outside the court. People are going to start not being nice to you anymore, and they're going to start seeing you as a cheater in everything you do, because not everybody can separate what you do inside of the playing field to what you do outside. So this is something that I think that's pinpoint to the one conclusion of this, and that's separating competition from your life. It's very hard to do, but once, if you want to talk to your child about the bad things that they've done in the match, do it, but that's still part of the training or the competition, okay? Once you're done, don't speak about it in the car, don't speak about it at home with your wife, you're done, that's it. You did a lesson with them after the match, okay? Let's say during the round you want to talk to them about, but once you get home and you hit the floor of the home, you're done, that's it. That child is just your child. So that, I think, can make the difference between an over-competitive character and a character and something that affects your future character, if that makes sense.
No. It's fair enough. I really understand what you're saying, and you developed it very well. And something I discussed about last podcast was the fact that character development trumps competitiveness, and I guess not even competitiveness, it trumps the potential future success in the athletic endeavors of your child. Because with a good character, you can, first of all, be a better athlete overall and in competitions if you make it. And if you don't make it, which is, again, a very high probability. So where do you bet? You bet on the highest probability number or the lowest probability number? Mm-hmm. If you don't make it, it will give you, like you said, structure in your future life, in your studies, academics, mm-hmm. work. That's why a lot of employers prefer that you have an athletic background or volunteering or stuff like that, because it just speaks volumes for your character. Mm-hmm. Possible volumes, because again, if you look around and the things that are rewarded today in some athletics is just shit, like, because I was part of the athletics, I would really want to meet that person before, hiring them or something. I wouldn't automatically qualify them as more character developed than others, because I saw some very negative characters, because again, competitiveness is more rewarded, and at whatever the price it is. And if the price for being a professional athlete is that you lose your values, you lose yourself, you lose your character, it's not a price worth to pay, I would say. And this leads us into the next topic, which is, it's very connected to this one. It's practice structure versus fun. So where do you delineate fun and practice versus structure? As we said before, the structure, it's very important to have a structure. Yes.
I think based on studies about different ways of training, and also based on what I've seen from one of the best tennis educations that relies in Spain, is that structure should be throughout. There should be obviously throughout the structure, but you should always end the practice the way you want your athlete to be or become. So the last 10 minutes or 15 minutes, it depends on the ratio of how long the practice is. Okay, on a 2-hour practice, usually the last 20 minutes, but on a 5-hour practice, like teams and stuff, then obviously the last 30 minutes or 40. So again, it depends on the ratio, but generally the last part of the practice should be the one where the athlete tries the most and moves their feet the best and has the best attitude. So, and why this is? Because according to science, you remember best the movements and the actions that you have done in the last part of the practice. This is what science has found. So as soon as I was like to find this out earlier in my stage. So, and my coach, I found this out from my coach actually. So he will always make me in the last 10-15 minutes. He will let me know this is the last part of your practice. So give everything that you have. Is the last, is the third set, if you want to put it that way. Is the this matters on the outcome of the training and the match. So yeah. So ultimately, I think that is where the practice versus fun difference relates, because the first part, overall, the first part should be the warm up and setting up your athlete for the practice. So warming them up mentally, physically, technically, depending on the sport, it has technical sides of it. And then some sort of middle part at one point, especially when you see that your athlete is losing focus and overwhelmed. A lot of coaches push there more. The way sometimes to push is to make them entertained by having some fun. That's sometimes the way to push, because that's the moment when you as an athlete and your mind is overwhelmed and is starting to feel the negative side of yourself. So starting to realize how I'm not fast enough to reach there, or I can never get these moments right, and starting to, the mind is overwhelmed. It's a young mind after all. I mean, the people who mostly train the situations, they're under 18. Imagine all these hormones going on through your mind.
Yeah.
Obviously, you will give up after an hour of really hardcore mental training. It's normal. I mean, you shouldn't blame anybody for it. But that's why sometimes the way to push them is just to make them relax and to make them see the fun of the side, and to take the pressure away from them, to make them understand this is after just a game. You're going to go home and you're going to be a kid again, because it's a lot of pressure to train for professional levels. And there is a lot of kids that we know that are 10 and 9, and they have these crazy lives, and it goes back to say, like Daniel said, yes, discipline is super important, especially from a young age, but you should not make a soldier out of your athlete, especially when they're young. There's a difference between a soldier and a discipline, and this is a bigger difference than the difference between parent and coach. Okay, so it's not that hard to make this happen. Anybody can see when a coach is pushing their child way too much and making them be like a soldier.
Yes, and the thing about fun is how do you do the practice? Where do you make it so it's fun? Is it always fun? It's not always fun. And they need to understand that fun will not get you anywhere. Fun, like you're getting upset if you lose. Yeah, because you had fun the last week. Is that fun? And when you lose? So again, it's keeping the level of competitiveness. It's fun when you improve. So if you have proper challenges where you can see improvement and you can become more competitive, that is real fun. That is real fun, that it's lasting longer than just temporal fun, as in, let's play a mini tennis game though for 2 hours. That's fun. Maybe it can be very fun, but are you working on something or just fooling around? Let's play 2 sets. Yeah, but you play like shit. You didn't put a forehand in. Is that maybe you had fun because you won? You beat a player that was worse than you, or you had a good day, but did you make any progress? You had temporal fun. You had fun that day, which some days like this are good after hard competitiveness and after hard competitions and practices. But do you do that all the time? No, because you're not going to progress. And then that's where you stagnate, and that's when everything becomes not to be fun. So that's where you have to have a proper challenge. So the most endurance and important type of fun is challenge fun.
Absolutely. So we can maybe say, create a new theory, if you want, or a new phrase, and say that fun is inconsistent, and then performance is consistent. So how what we mean by this is, what we're trying to say in simpler ways for them to understand is that fun comes at points in your practice when, to give an example of a drill in tennis, to put it more into practice, you're hitting forehand, they have to hit 3 forehands. And then let's say one of those, they don't get too close to the ball and they hit it really, really badly, okay? It's okay that one time, okay, in the 10 rounds that they had to say, oh my God, you hit that like my grandma or something, or you moved your feet there like my grandma. That is fun, because it's taking them away from all the pressure. But to do it over and over, then it would be detrimental because then eventually they're not learning what they're doing wrong. However, if you keep the fun inconsistent, so once every 20 minutes you tell them, instead of telling them, remember what I told you about extending the hand when you hit the forehand, you tell them, hey, my grandma moves faster than you, or something like that, something fun. But then you keep the performance consistent. So you continue the other 19 times telling them in tennis ways or in soccer ways what you did wrong there. And then that one time you make it fun for them. I think this is the difference. Fun is inconsistent and performance is consistent. I think that's really important to me at least.
Yeah.
Well, genius is great.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah. I'm just looking and I'm taking notes right here. That's why I'm reacting so slowly. And yes, also because it's also.
It's always also.
Always not also.
Additionally,
there we go. Exactly. Furthermore, I need more adjectives or that. I think that's
synonyms.
Is that synonyms?
Yes.
Well, no, but it's a description of something.
Oh, you meant the actual word.
Yeah.
No, but what you need is synonyms.
Yeah, I need synonyms for sure. Yeah.
Look, we're having some fun. This is the inconsistent fun of our conversation.
Exactly. Not productive at all. Nobody cares about it. But it's a mental break right here. Fun is important, especially at the developmental age when you first start with a sport. Yes. Because it's more important than structure. Because you're just fooling around and you want to let kids fool around and explore different types of shots and explore different types of playing the game and explore even multiple games. They don't have to stick to one game. It's going to develop them physically in different ways. You play football, it's going to make your cardio better and your change of direction better. And then you combine it with tennis, it's going to make it even better. It's going to add some other type of footwork that might not be directly translatable to football and vice versa, but it's for sure going to help you. And all this done with fun. But after a few years and after you want to get more serious and you start going to competitions, that's where you need more structure, because if you don't have structure, you're going to go to competitions, you're going to get destroyed, it's going to be less fun, you don't want to practice anymore. So that's where you need to find that balance. Do you want to add anything about this before we move on?
I should not understand. No.
Wow.
Oh, come on.
I'm amazed.
Well, that gives me enough material for two, so.
Speechless. Deemed her speechless. That is rare, folks. It's like a rare occasion right here.
We don't need to get into relationship issues here, okay?
Absolutely. This is not fun anymore, guys. Let's talk about last part, and obviously something else if you want to add. But let's discuss some tennis-specific tactics. This is the first part of the interview. Please tune in at the same time on the 12th of May for the second part. Cheers!